Dubai, January 2010. The desert city shimmered under neon skies, a kingdom of glass and steel rising from the sands. Skyscrapers blinked like diamonds, fountains danced to symphonies, and luxury cars whispered across polished highways. For the rich, Dubai was a playground. For spies, it was the perfect stage. Inside the glowing atrium of the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel, a man slipped quietly through the revolving doors. He wasn't a celebrity or a tycoon, though he dressed like one. No photographers followed him, no staff rushed to greet him. To the untrained eye, he was just another Middle Eastern businessman. But his name, at least on the Syrian passport in his hand, was Mahmoud Abdul Rauf al-Mabhouh. And to Israel, he was a ghost they had been chasing for more than 2 decades. In the city of luxury and lights, one man checked in for his final night, without knowing the walls were already closing in. Al-Mabhouh wasn't a soldier on the battlefield. He was something far more dangerous, a facilitator, the man who moved money, weapons, and secrets in silence. He had orchestrated arms deals between Tehran and Gaza. He had arranged missile shipments that rained destruction on Israeli cities. And perhaps most hauntingly, Israeli officials believed he had played a role in the kidnapping and killing of 2 IDF soldiers in 1989. For Mossad, his death was not just revenge. It was justice. And tonight, justice had checked into room 230. Dubai was supposed to be safe ground. Neutral, apolitical, and overflowing with businessmen from every corner of the Middle East. Here, Syrian intelligence officers rubbed shoulders with Iranian traders. Hamas officials could meet Qatari sponsors in hotel lobbies without raising suspicion. And al-Mabhouh believed it. He traveled often under false identities, confident in his ability to blend in. He had been hunted before, but Dubai was no battlefield. It was shopping malls, palm-shaped islands, and towers piercing the heavens. But this time the hunters were already here. What al-Mabhouh never saw was the net closing around him long before his plane touched down. Weeks earlier, Mossad had begun setting the stage. Forged passports. Agents entered Dubai on genuine-looking passports from the UK, Ireland, Germany, and France. Some were stolen identities, others fabrications so flawless even immigration officers couldn't spot the lies. Surveillance teams, disguised as tourists, tennis players, and business executives, Mossad operatives flooded Dubai's luxury hotels. They checked in days in advance, rehearsing routes, testing camera angles, memorizing security patrols. Electronic tracking. Al-Mabhouh's phone was compromised, his emails monitored, his movements traced from Damascus airport to the Gulf. By the time he landed in Dubai, Mossad knew not just his hotel, but his room number. Later investigations showed Mossad had cloned his credit card details and even hacked into airline databases to shadow his every step. The lobby watchers, as al-Mabhouh entered the glittering lobby, 2 men sat at the hotel bar. They appeared relaxed, sipping orange juice, watching a muted football match on TV. In reality, their eyes never left the revolving doors. Near the elevators, a young couple waited, hand in hand, laughing softly. But their luggage was fake. Empty shells hiding surveillance gear. By the pool, a man in a white tracksuit jogged lazily with headphones in his ears. He wasn't listening to music. He was listening to updates from the operation team. They were everywhere, yet nowhere. A city of strangers, all watching one man who thought no one was watching at all. The door closes. Al-Mabhouh checked into room 230. He locked the door. The faint hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. He placed his bag on the desk, pulled out his phone, and began dialing. Iranian contacts, Syrian associates, meetings about shipments and money. Every word mattered. Every deal could tip the balance in the shadow war between Israel and Hamas. But what he didn't know, what he could never have known, was that his calls were already compromised. His room already under observation. The very walls around him, though silent, had eyes. He thought he had locked the door on the world. He didn't realize he had just locked himself inside a cage. Hours passed. Dubai's nightlife roared outside. The fountains of Burj Khalifa danced. Tourists swarmed the malls. and the sound of Arabic pop music spilled from luxury cars. But inside room 230, the silence was thick, suffocating. Somewhere in the corridors beyond his door, Mossad agents moved like shadows, checking cameras, confirming exits, timing every second. The hunters were patient, the prey was unaware. The last, safe haven. Why Dubai? Why here? Al-Mabhouh had told associates that the city felt secure. The Emirates had no open conflict with Hamas, and Dubai's reputation for luxury and discretion made it an ideal meeting ground. But Mossad knew there was no such thing as a safe haven. Not for him. Not after decades of blood. This was not just another mission. This was a message. By the next day, when the sun rose over Dubai's skyline, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh would be gone. His last breath taken not in battle, not in Gaza, but in the soft sheets of a luxury hotel. The camera of imagination lingers on room 230's closed door. The lights inside still on. A man inside making calls unaware. Outside, footsteps echo faintly in the carpeted corridor. Too soft to notice. Too precise to be random. The hunters are here. The countdown has begun. The hunters who now stalked the corridors of the Al Bustan Rotana Hotel were not improvising. This wasn't some sudden strike born overnight. This was the climax of a decades-long shadow war between Israel's most feared intelligence service, Mossad, and Hamas's secret networks. Before the door of room 230 ever closed, the war for Mahmoud al-Mabhouh's life had already been fought in the dark alleys of history. The blood debt for Mossad, the hunt for al-Mabhouh was not simply about weapons smuggling. It was personal. Back in 1989, two young Israeli soldiers, Avi Sasportas and Ilan Sadon, were kidnapped and murdered by Hamas operatives. Evidence pointed to al-Mabhouh's direct involvement. His name was whispered in Israeli military briefings as the architect of their deaths. It lit a fire inside Israel's intelligence services. To them, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was no longer just a courier. He was a marked man, a ghost to be hunted. Fact, in Israeli intelligence culture, Mossad doesn't forgive attacks on IDF soldiers. Operations can wait years, even decades, but they never forget. Early attempts. This wasn't Mossad's first dance with al-Mabhouh. Over the years, multiple attempts had been made to intercept him. In Syria, Mossad agents had once tracked him leaving a Damascus safe house, but Syrian security was too tight. Pulling the trigger then would have risked war. In Sudan, an opportunity came when he oversaw a shipment of Iranian arms through Sudan. But Mossad prioritized striking the convoy itself, destroying weapons on the move rather than the man behind them. In Lebanon, he was spotted in Beirut, but Hezbollah's shadows were everywhere. Any attempt in that city would be suicide. Time and again, al-Mabhouh slipped away. Each failure added pressure. Each escape deepened Mossad's obsession. The pattern of fear by the late 2000s, al-Mabhouh had become more cautious. He switched passports, changed hotels at the last minute, and never stayed in one city too long. Yet ironically, this very paranoia created patterns. Every courier, every smuggler, every operative eventually makes a mistake. And al-Mabhouh's mistake was Dubai. Dubai was neutral, yes, but it was also modern. Cameras on every corner, airports wired with biometric checks, hotels crawling with surveillance systems. To Mossad, this wasn't a fortress. It was a stage Mossad's preparation. The Dubai operation wasn't a random decision. It was a calculated strike born from patience and planning. The team. Over 24 Mossad operatives were deployed, many using stolen European identities. Some acted as decoys, others as watchers, a few as cleaners. Every role was scripted. The cover stories. Tennis players, businessmen, couples on vacation. Each cover rehearsed. Agents even carried tennis rackets to the hotel to complete the illusion. The safe houses. Apartments rented across Dubai gave the team places to meet, change disguises, and rehearse. The exit strategy. Flights were pre-booked. Within hours of the mission's completion, agents would scatter across the globe. Fact. Dubai police later revealed at least 27 different suspects with forged passports were linked to the mission, making it one of the most complex Mossad operations ever executed. Abroad, the chessboard of espionage, while the world above saw glittering towers. Below the surface ran a chessboard of spies, Dubai had become a strange magnet for intelligence activity. Iranian operatives used it as a financial hub to bypass sanctions. Hamas envoys treated it as a safe meeting ground with Gulf backers. Western intelligence agencies quietly monitored all sides, and into this arena Mossad stepped, not just as hunters, but as predators who had been sharpening their claws for decades. To the world, Dubai was a paradise of malls and fountains. To Mossad, it was a spider's web, and al-Mabhouh had just walked into the center. Why now? Timing is everything in espionage. Mossad's leadership believed al-Mabhouh was at a critical moment. He was negotiating weapons deals with Iran that would send advanced rockets into Gaza. He was moving funds through Dubai's banking system, leaving a digital footprint Mossad could trace. And perhaps most importantly, he was alone. No Syrian bodyguards, no Hamas entourage. Just a single man, carrying secrets worth millions, stepping into a luxury hotel as if the city's glittering lights would protect him. Mossad knew better. The hunters assemble inside safe houses across Dubai. Phones buzzed with coded messages. Teams began to move. One group checked into the hotel. Another rented a car to shadow al-Mabhouh's taxi. Surveillance teams tested hotel corridors, timing how long it took to reach room 230 from different angles. Every movement rehearsed. Every second calculated. By the time al-Mabhouh locked his door on that fateful night, the hunters had already rehearsed his final minutes again and again. In the Mossad war room back in Tel Aviv, officials watched as updates streamed in. Their phantom target had finally caged himself. No bodyguards, no allies. Just four walls and a hotel door. For Mossad, the decision was clear. This was the moment. The hunt that began in 1989 was about to end in 2010, in a hotel room surrounded by velvet carpets and golden chandeliers. The order was given. Move in. Room 230. The number glowed softly on the brass plate as Mahmoud al-Mabhouh slid his keycard through the lock and entered. The click of the door closing felt like safety, but in reality it was the sound of the trap snapping shut. Outside, the hotel pulsed with ordinary life. Tourists checked in with smiles. Luggage carts squeaked across the lobby tiles, and waiters carried trays of cocktails toward the pool. No one could sense that history was about to unfold in these corridors, but the hunters could feel it. In Dubai's playground of luxury, Mossad's killers moved like ghosts. Every smile, every laugh, every step a mask hiding the steel beneath. Disguises in plain sight, the Mossad team had rehearsed this operation with military precision. Their disguises weren't costumes from a spy film. They were subtle, believable, and designed to vanish into the background. The tourists. A man and woman in casual clothes strolled hand in hand down the hallway, pausing to take photos of hotel art pieces. Hidden in her purse was a compact surveillance camera, transmitting live footage. The tennis players. Two men in tracksuits carried rackets and joked about a match. No one suspected that their rackets carried concealed electronics and lockpicking tools. The businessmen. A trio in tailored suits lingered in the lobby, casually discussing investments while their eyes tracked security cameras and staff rotations. Every corner of the hotel had eyes. Every exit was covered. Watching the prey from a surveillance hub set up in a rented apartment just blocks away, Mossad handlers monitored the feeds. Al-Mabhouh had checked in. His calls were already being intercepted. His movements were predictable. Room, calls, dinner, rest. But what if he decided to leave suddenly? What if he sensed something? That's where the watchers came in. One agent leaned against a pillar outside the hotel, pretending to check emails on a phone. Another sat in a rental car across the street, sunglasses hiding his scanning eyes. A woman dressed as a hotel guest paced near the elevators, every gesture casual yet calculated. The prey was never out of sight, not for a second. Inside the hotel on the third floor, two Mossad operatives disguised as maintenance staff wheeled a cart filled with towels and bottled water. Beneath the towels, nestled in hidden compartments, lay a toolkit, gloves, syringes, wires, and electronic keycards. They passed by room 230, paused, listened. Inside, faint voices echoed. Al-Mabhouh was on the phone again, negotiating arms deals. His voice carried the arrogance of a man who believed he was safe. The agents exchanged a glance. The timing was close, not yet, but soon. Every step he took, every word he spoke, was already measured against a ticking clock only his hunters could hear. The final rehearsal back in the safe house, a leader known only by his alias gave the final green light. The operation would be swift, silent, deniable. The method had been debated for weeks. A gunshot? Too loud. Poison in food? Too unpredictable.
Car accident?
Too messy. In the end, Mossad chose the simplest, most chilling method: silent suffocation. It would leave little trace. It would look natural. A man found dead in his hotel room. No signs of forced entry. No clear evidence of foul play. Fact, Dubai police later claimed the Mossad team used a muscle relaxant to immobilize al-Mabhouh, followed by suffocation with a pillow, making it appear as if he had died in his sleep. The corridor of shadows, as midnight neared, the hotel grew quieter. Tourists retreated to their rooms. The clinking of glasses in the bar slowed. The hum of elevators softened. This was the moment the hunters had waited for. Two agents positioned themselves at the ends of the third-floor corridor, blocking any unexpected visitors. Another pair waited in the stairwell, disguises ready in case they were confronted. The maintenance men approached room 230 once more, their cart rolling softly on the carpet. One agent slipped a key card into the lock, an electronic override prepared days earlier. The green light blinked. The door clicked. They were in. Meanwhile, inside al-Mabhouh had just finished a call. He rubbed his temples, exhausted from travel. His shoes were off, his jacket hung neatly on a chair. He glanced at the door once, then dismissed the thought. Locked, secure. He poured himself a glass of water, unaware that within seconds, shadows would pour through the very same door. The net closes, the agents moved quickly, silent, efficient. Two entered first, their gloves already on. Another followed, closing the door softly behind him. A fourth stood outside in the corridor, ear pressed to an earpiece, monitoring for danger. Al-Mabhouh barely had time to react. A sudden flash of movement, two men lunging forward. A sharp prick of a syringe against his skin. His body jerked, confusion flooding his eyes. Words formed on his lips, but no sound came. The drug worked fast. His muscles weakened. His body slumped. Before panic could become a scream, a pillow pressed against his face. The struggle was brief, muffled by the thick walls of room 230. Within moments, the phantom who had haunted Israel for decades was motionless. For 20 years he ran from the shadows. In the end, it was the shadows that tucked him into silence. The exit the agents moved with surgical precision. No chaos, no blood. They checked his pulse, confirmed the job, then began their cleanup. Personal items arranged neatly to avoid suspicion. Door locked again from inside using the same override card. Surveillance wiped. Within minutes they were gone, melting back into the hotel like ordinary guests. One group headed to the elevators, another to the stairwell, a third to the lobby. They smiled, nodded politely at passing tourists, even joked with a receptionist about the next tennis match. By morning, most of them would already be on flights to Europe, their names disappearing into forged passports and false trails. In room 230, silence returned. The man who believed Dubai was safe lay still on the bed, eyes closed, chest unmoving. To the world, it would look like a natural death. But Mossad knew better. The net had tightened. The ghost had been caught, and outside Dubai's fountains danced on, oblivious to the fact that the world's most daring assassination had just unfolded in one of its glittering hotels. Dubai glittered like a jewel in the desert, the city of gold, of endless luxury, of billion-dollar skyscrapers and private islands shaped like the world map. For tourists, it was a playground of extravagance, but for spies, Dubai was something else entirely, a pressure cooker of secrets where everyone watched everyone. And now, inside one of Dubai's most expensive luxury hotels, the Hamas spy chief had checked in. Traveling under a carefully forged passport, he appeared as an unassuming businessman. A tailored Armani suit, designer sunglasses, and a Rolex on his wrist. His disguise wasn't that of a fugitive, but of a tycoon. He believed that in Dubai's ocean of wealth he would vanish like a grain of sand, but he didn't know one thing. Mossad had already laid its net. The arrival on January 18th, late evening, he stepped out of his limousine and entered the hotel's glass doors. The chandelier above sparkled. The marble floors reflected his confident stride, and the lobby staff greeted him with polite smiles. To anyone else, he was just another VIP guest. But hidden cameras, discreetly placed by Mossad operatives in the hotel days before, tracked his every step. His name in the hotel registry wasn't real, but Mossad's data analysts had already cracked his alias weeks ago. By the time he pressed the elevator button, a team of 6 agents already knew which room keycard was sliding into his pocket. The ghost team moves in Mossad's strike team, codenamed Kidon, had been in Dubai long before him. They had trickled into the city over several days, each traveling on different European passports. One appeared to be a tourist couple snapping selfies at the Burj Khalifa. Another posed as a businessman attending a finance conference. A third pair blended in as airline crew. Every identity was flawless, custom-tailored to survive scrutiny. Credit cards, phone records, hotel bookings, even social media accounts, all fabricated by Mossad's legendary false identity unit. Tonight, they converged silently around the hotel. Some already inside, others nearby. By the time the Hamas chief reached his suite, Mossad had him inside a golden cage with invisible bars. Luxury becomes a prison. The spy chief's hotel suite was lavish, plush carpets, a panoramic view of the Dubai marina, and a private jacuzzi. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and looked out the window, unaware that across the street a Mossad sniper adjusted the lens of his surveillance camera. Everything he did was watched. Every call recorded, every step monitored. To make him feel safe, Mossad used patience as a weapon. They didn't strike immediately. Instead, they allowed him to relax, allowed him to believe he had slipped away from danger. But in reality, every luxury he indulged in, room service, spa visits, late-night strolls, was being mapped into Mossad's operational playbook. The hotel corridor of death. The plan was simple but chilling. One team member would follow him through the lobby disguised as a tourist. Another pair would control the hotel's CCTV cameras, looping footage at the right time. A third would pose as a maintenance worker near his suite. And the strike pair, the ones chosen to confront him, waited for the signal. The hotel, full of glittering chandeliers and golden railings, would become the perfect hunting ground. No witnesses would see the real story. Only the cameras, edited later, would show a sanitized version of events. The silence before the storm. At exactly 10:45 p.m., the Hamas chief left his suite, planning to meet a contact at a cafe. He strolled casually down the corridor, humming a tune, suitcase in hand. But behind him, the lift doors opened. 2 Mossad operatives stepped out. They looked like ordinary hotel guests, but inside their briefcase was not paperwork. It was the end of his life. He didn't know it yet, but he was walking into a carefully staged trap that would make the world wake up to one of Mossad's most daring operations ever. The morning after, Dubai's glittering facade hid a different story. News vans arrived like seabirds circling the hotel that had become a crime scene. Outside, guests continued to sip coffee on the terrace and tourists posed for photos. The city's luxury heart beat stubbornly indifferent to the dark echo now lodged in room 230. Inside the suite, linen smelled faintly of amber and tobacco. A body lay on the bed. The world would call it a mystery. Those who had pulled the strings called it a successful closure. The discovery, it was a hotel attendant who first raised the alarm. She had brought fresh towels and found the door slightly ajar. Inside, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh lay motionless, his face pale under the chandelier glow. At first glance, there were no signs of violence, no blood, no overturned furniture. Only a stillness too absolute for a man who had left the night before, ostensibly to meet a contact. Her call brought a lull of panic that rippled through the hotel's back corridors and up into the plush lobby. Dubai police arrived within minutes and sealed the suite. Reporters were kept outside the velvet ropes, but cameras were already there. Hungry, persistent, waiting for a statement, a clue, anything to turn a closed door into a headline. The first question's cause of death could not be determined by narrow sight. The body would be taken for forensic examination. Phones and laptops were confiscated. Hotel CCTV footage was requested. The hotel staff, initially bewildered, were soon interrogated about guests who might have arrived or lingered late into the night. The receptionist recollected a few strangers, a man with a tennis racket, a woman with a camera, trivial details that would later prove decisive. In intelligence circles, the moment of discovery is rarely simple. If an assassination is to remain deniable, The scene must read as natural. If it will be claimed publicly, then the story must be manufactured with precision. In Dubai, the immediate official line was cautious. A sudden and unexplained death. But the world knows how to ask questions. The paper trail and the broken masks within 24 hours. Surveillance footage surfaced, not from the hotel, which was still tightly controlled, but from surrounding streets and nearby businesses. The footage showed several Western faces arriving and leaving in calm, practiced lines. Passport copies and travel records that Dubai police would later publish showed names and documents that traced across Europe, Britain, Ireland, France, Germany. Governments in those nations were suddenly being called to explain why their passports had been used by people now accused of murder. That was the first layer of cover pulled away. The second was even more explosive. The passports, it turned out, had been forged or stolen. Families reported missing passports. Nations protested. Embassies demanded answers. For a secret operation whose success relied on mimicry, the discovery of fake European covers created a diplomatic firestorm. The accused did not look like the countries whose documents they carried. They looked like trained operatives who had deliberately chosen those identities to muddy the water. The forensics and the silence. The autopsy and toxicology would become the technical backbone of the story. Forensic teams worked in sterile rooms, peeling back the physical darkness to look for chemicals, blunt trauma, traces that would say whether the death had been violent, natural, or induced. Preliminary reports mentioned evidence consistent with asphyxiation and chemical agents that could incapacitate quickly. Descriptions that made headlines and security experts squirm. But for families and state actors, the forensic world is slow. It speaks in cautious phrases and delayed sentences. Months of tests and diplomatic haggling would follow. Publicly, the Israeli government refused confirmation. "We don't comment on such matters," officials said in carefully measured statements. Silence is a tool in itself in the intelligence world, a buffer that prevents escalation and preserves strategic ambiguity. The diplomatic explosion. Dubai's reaction was immediate and public. Emirates officials expressed outrage at the exploitation of foreign passports. Several European governments, stunned and angered, opened inquiries into the theft and misuse of their documents. Ireland and Britain lodged official protests when their passports were tied to suspects and demanded accountability. Airports and border agencies tightened checks. What began as a single death morphed into an international crisis about forged identities and the abuse of travel documents. The diplomatic fallout has its own choreography. Cold calls between foreign ministries, quiet expulsions of diplomats, charges of unacceptable behavior, and in some cases, criminal investigations launched in the passport's countries of origin. For host nations, the calculus is bitter. Pursuit of justice must be weighed against the risk of wider turmoil. For Israel, the public brushback was predictable and often absorbed behind closed doors. For Dubai, there was an internal urgency. Foreign operatives had used their soil as a stage for a covert killing, and the emirate could not let that perception stick. The public theater news outlets replayed CCTV frames, blared headlines, and filled opinion pages with pieces about the ethics of targeted assassinations. Social media echoed every leak and rumor. Hamas, when reached through intermediaries, accused Israel openly. Mourning rituals took place in parts of Gaza and the West Bank. Grief mingled with defiance. Human rights groups raised uncomfortable questions about extrajudicial killings, while states that relied on shadow diplomacy watched the spectacle and counted the cost. In the controlled spaces of intelligence analysis, however, the operation was measured by different metrics. Did the mission take the target out of play? Did it leave trails that jeopardized future methods? Did the diplomatic backlash outweigh the strategic gain? These are the cold equations intelligence agencies run after the adrenaline has faded. The cleaners and the false trails. Even the best-planned operations need irony. The messy bits that escape control. In Dubai, that was the passports, the CCTV clips from a nearby shop, a maintenance worker who remembered faces, a lax hotel record that left a thread for journalists to pull. Agents who had once moved like fog sometimes left fingerprints of identity in the wrong places. Not literal prints, but choices about what documents to plant, which looped footage to leave visible, which hotels to choose. There were also deliberate cover moves. Within hours, a team began to disseminate confusion, disclaimers in international press, slips of narrative that pointed to criminal gangs or rival factions. Evidence would be strewn and then quietly suppressed. Phone numbers belonging to dead-end contacts were rung to create noise. For those trained to read between lines, such noise is rarely random. The first arrests and the long-tail Dubai police, under national pressure, made arrests, not of the masterminds but of suspects carrying the false passports. Those arrests triggered judicial processes, extradition requests, and months of investigations across continents. Names once whispered in intelligence briefings were pulled into formal court dockets. Lawyers took over where spies once moved. In some countries, inquiries fizzled. In others, public prosecutors followed leads into the labyrinth of false identities and shell companies. A city that continues to shine. Yet despite the drama, Dubai resumed its choreography. The fountains arced, the malls opened, and the social engines of the city kept spinning. Power wants stability. Commerce wants predictability. For the emirate, the story could not be allowed to ossify into an image of a foreign power using local hotels as hunting grounds. So a dual narrative evolved. One for the world, full of outrage and forensic detail. Another, quieter reflex. Policy changes, beefed up ID checks, diplomatic notes. The body had been removed, the suite disinfected, the linen replaced. The cameras had been downloaded and looped. Investigators had names. But the true architects remained at large, already melting back into the global currents that carried them. For some, the operation proved Mossad's reach and resolve. For others, it was a dangerous precedent. And for the man whose life had ended in the soft sheets of a luxury hotel, the questions multiplied. Had he been judged? Avenged? Or simply erased to send a message that would burn quietly across borders? The world would debate and litigate. Intelligence services would adjust and relearn. But in a city built on surfaces, beneath the gloss a deeper unease had crept in. A reminder that where there is light, shadows will find a way to move. The event in Dubai didn't end when the door to a luxury hotel suite closed. Its impact spread across governments, organizations, and international relations. Though a key figure was no longer present, his influence continued, leaving a lingering sense of uncertainty and caution. The message in the shadows for Hamas, the incident was not just the loss of a leader. It revealed vulnerabilities. Their greatest strength, secrecy, had been compromised in one of the world's most secure cities. If such a situation could occur there, what about other locations? Discussions in Gaza shifted. Leaders now questioned the safety of various places, from hotels to airports. Everyone wondered who would face scrutiny next. The event became more than just a loss. It carried a clear message. No place is beyond scrutiny. Hamas adapt security measures within Hamas evolved quickly. Plans were revised, travel became restricted, and communications shifted to more secure platforms. Meetings that once occurred in open settings were now confined to more protected spaces. Some leaders even began rotating their locations every night. This new caution created more security, but also fueled stronger resolve. Propaganda portrayed the event as a challenge to overcome, with leaders vowing to respond. A quiet success. In Tel Aviv, the operation was seen as a success. The psychological impact was considered just as significant as the practical one. In intelligence, fear can be as important as facts. The operation left Hamas dealing with uncertainty, disrupting their plans. Though there were diplomatic consequences, the operation effectively slowed down key activities. In the world of covert operations, such trade-offs are often deemed necessary. Dubai's response. For Dubai, the incident was a breach of trust. A city known for its tourism and business had become the focal point of an international operation. The city could not afford to ignore the perception that it was vulnerable. In the years that followed, Dubai upgraded its security measures, implementing cutting-edge surveillance systems like facial recognition and biometric checks. Visitors were now subject to more thorough procedures, designed to ensure a repeat of the incident would not occur. The legacy of the event. Even years later, the shadow of the event continues to influence the region. Intelligence communities still discuss it, and leaders remain vigilant. Though the event itself may have been years ago, its impact is still felt whenever decisions are made in places once considered secure. The silent conflict. This was never about just one person. It represented a broader, ongoing conflict, a quiet struggle that unfolds in places most people never think about. It's a battle that tests security systems in the most unexpected locations. The Dubai operation entered the records of global intelligence, studied and analyzed worldwide. Some see it as controversial, others as a clever move, but all agree. It showed that no location is ever truly safe, and the real battleground is not always where we expect it to be. The lingering uncertainty. The uncertainty that followed still remains. It serves as a reminder that security is always fragile, and danger can arise in unexpected ways. Even the safest environments can become unpredictable, where silence, not noise, can signal danger.